maybe this story could save someone's life. It began quietly, almost insignificantly, a local incident so small that no one would have paid it much attention. But one random clue would soon reveal that behind this seemingly ordinary tragedy hid a far greater darkness. And when the truth surfaced, the shock spread across an entire nation. It started in a small, peaceful town. Yet within days, panic gripped the whole of the United States. News anchors struggled to calm a terrified public, and investigators worked around the clock. A mystery that began in one family's bathroom would soon become one of the most haunting criminal cases in modern American history. The story begins in Auburn, Washington. It was a cool morning, June 11th, 1986. At exactly 6:30 a.m., Susan Snow, a 40-year-old bank executive, gently woke her 15-year-old daughter Haley to get ready for school. Everything about that morning was ordinary, the kind of weekday routine repeated thousands of times before. Her husband, Paul, a truck driver, had already left for work, leaving mother and daughter alone in their quiet suburban home. The house had 2 bathrooms separated by a single wall. While Haley took her morning shower in one, Susan stood in the other, brushing her teeth and preparing for work. Minutes passed in silence, the kind that fills every sleepy morning. When Haley finished, she packed her school bag and noticed something odd. Her mother hadn't come out yet. The faucet in the other bathroom was still running. She called out. No answer. Her voice echoed through the hallway. A strange, uneasy feeling crept in as she slowly approached the door. Then, when she pushed it open, everything inside her froze. Her mother lay motionless on the cold tile floor, pale, eyes wide open, breath shallow. For a brief second, Haley couldn't understand what she was seeing. Then the scream tore out of her. She grabbed the phone and dialed 911 with trembling hands. When paramedics arrived, Susan was still alive, barely. Her pulse weak, her lips turning blue. Within minutes, she slipped into a coma. By noon, doctors declared brain death. Machines kept her heart beating, but her mind was gone. 13 minutes. That's how long it took for a healthy, energetic woman to collapse without reason. A freak accident? A hidden illness? No one knew. But something about that death would soon lead detectives down a path that exposed one of the most chilling criminal schemes in American history. When the shock settled, the question that haunted everyone was simple. How could this happen? Susan was young, healthy, and active. There were no warning signs, no history of illness, nothing that could explain why she had suddenly collapsed that morning. To her family, it felt like a nightmare unfolding in daylight. At first, paramedics suspected an accident. Maybe she had slipped on the wet floor and hit her head. The explanation seemed reasonable enough, but soon after, the doctors who examined her realized something didn't add up. The head injury they found was too minor to cause her death. There was no internal bleeding, no trauma, nothing that could explain such rapid organ failure. The autopsy began the following day, and even then, nothing looked out of place, until one of the pathologists leaned closer and noticed something faint, almost invisible. It wasn't a mark or a wound, it was a smell, a bitter, sharp scent, like almonds. To most people, it would have gone unnoticed. But one of the experts in the room happened to carry a rare genetic trait that allowed him to detect it: the distinct odor of cyanide. He froze, then exchanged a glance with his colleague. Half of the human population can't smell cyanide at all. If both men had lacked that gene, the case would have likely been filed away as sudden unexplained death. The discovery changed everything. Blood samples were rushed to a specialized laboratory for toxicology tests. It was an expensive and time-consuming process, reserved only for extraordinary cases. And this one suddenly was. The results left no room for doubt. Susan Snow had been poisoned with potassium cyanide, one of the deadliest substances known to man. Cyanide works quickly and silently. It blocks the body's ability to use oxygen, suffocating its cells even as the victim gasps for air. That explains Susan's desperate struggle to breathe when her daughter found her. The question now was how. How did cyanide enter her body? She didn't work in a lab. She wasn't around chemicals. It had to come from something she consumed that morning. Investigators combed through her kitchen, bathroom, and workplace, looking for anything out of the ordinary. The answer came not from the police, but from Susan's twin sister, Sarah. On the day of the funeral, Sarah developed a headache. She went to Susan's house to grab the same pain medicine her sister always used, Excedrin, a common over-the-counter painkiller. But when she opened the bottle, she noticed something strange. Her sister had always used tablets, not capsules. Yet, these were gel capsules. That tiny difference would soon unravel the most chilling truth imaginable. Sarah's curiosity quickly turned into dread. She stared at the small white and green capsules in her sister's medicine cabinet. Something about them feeling wrong. Susan had always been careful. She'd even told Sarah once that she preferred solid tablets because capsules dissolve too fast. So, why were there capsules now? Still uneasy, Sarah handed the bottle over to the investigators. It was a small gesture, but it changed the entire course of the case. The police sent the Excedrin capsules for lab testing. Days later, the results stunned everyone. 9 of the 42 capsules were filled not with pain medication, but with potassium cyanide. The realization sent shockwaves through Washington state. The killer wasn't hiding in the shadows. They could be on every pharmacy shelf. One bottle, one random purchase could mean death. Authorities immediately began removing Excedrin from stores, fearing there could be more contaminated bottles in circulation. Detectives now needed to know who had bought that specific bottle. It turned out Susan hadn't purchased it herself. Her husband, Paul, had bought it just days before her death. That detail was unsettling, and it instantly placed him under suspicion. When questioned, Paul explained that he had simply wanted to help. His wife often suffered from migraines, and the pharmacist had recommended Excedrin in capsule form. He even admitted that he too had taken 2 capsules that same morning. But unlike Susan, he was alive. The idea that one person in a household could die from poison while another remained unharmed puzzled the investigators. Was it random luck or something deliberate? Did someone tamper with only a few capsules? Or was the entire bottle targeted? As detectives retraced every step of the Snow family, toxicologists kept searching for more answers. The more they looked, the more questions appeared. How could such a deadly toxin end up inside a sealed medicine bottle? Then came a phone call that changed everything. Another death, eerily similar, had occurred just 6 days before Susan Snow's collapse. A man named Bruce Nickell, a local mechanic, had also died suddenly after taking Excedrin for a headache. His death had been ruled natural at the time, but now investigators weren't so sure. 2 deaths, the same brand, the same symptoms, the same town. The panic that once shook Chicago 4 years earlier was about to return, and this time it would expose a story even darker than anyone could imagine. The call came from a woman named Stella Nickell, Bruce's widow. Her voice trembled as she explained that her husband had died under strange circumstances just a week before the Snow tragedy. He'd come home from work one evening, complained of a severe headache, taken several Excedrin capsules, and within minutes collapsed on their front porch. The doctors said it was emphysema, a lung disease caused by years of smoking. But Stella was sure they were wrong. When news broke that a woman in Auburn had died from cyanide-laced Excedrin, something clicked inside her. The details were identical. The symptoms, the brand, even the time of death. She rushed to call the police and turned over her husband's half-empty bottle of Excedrin. Toxicologists ran new tests. The findings were chillingly clear. Several of the capsules inside Bruce's bottle also contained cyanide. His death had not been a coincidence. It was murder. The revelation reignited nationwide panic. Pharmacies across Washington began clearing their shelves. News reporters stood outside local drugstores, warning viewers not to take any painkillers until the situation was under control. For many Americans, it felt like déjà vu, a ghost from the past rising again. Just 4 years earlier, in 1982, a similar nightmare had gripped the country. In Chicago, 7 people, including a 12-year-old girl, had died after taking Tylenol, another over-the-counter painkiller. Someone had tampered with the capsules, replacing the medicine with cyanide. The killer was never found. That case had changed America forever. Millions of bottles were recalled, and pharmaceutical companies lost fortunes. It was the tragedy that forced the industry to introduce tamper-proof packaging, the foil seals and plastic wraps we take for granted today. But now, 4 years later, the unthinkable was happening again. The similarities were undeniable. The same type of capsules, the same poison, the same random victims. Detectives feared a copycat. someone inspired by the Chicago murders. If that was true, no one in America was safe. Anyone could buy a bottle of medicine and never wake up again. Authorities contacted the manufacturer, Bristol Myers, who immediately ordered a mass recall of all Excedrin capsules. Store owners across Washington placed warning signs on their doors, and frightened customers returned thousands of bottles. Yet, despite the chaos, one question haunted investigators. Who was behind this? Was it a deranged stranger repeating history, or someone much closer to home? The answer would come from a place no one expected: the widow who made that first phone call. For weeks, investigators searched desperately for patterns, anything linking the two victims. There was no overlap in their social circles, no common workplaces, no shared habits. The only connection seemed to be the Excedrin bottles themselves, and yet, fate had already placed the real culprit right in front of them: Stella Nickell, the grieving widow who had begged for her husband's case to be reopened. At first, she appeared as a woman broken by loss, emotional, cooperative, eager to help. But as detectives dug deeper, the image began to crack. They discovered that out of millions of bottles tested, only 5 contained cyanide. 2 of those bottles had come directly from Stella's home. Statistically, the odds of that happening by coincidence were nearly 0. The more they learned about Stella, the darker the picture became. Her life had been a chain of hardship and poor choices. She'd grown up in an abusive household with an alcoholic mother and an absent father. As a teenager, she fell into trouble, arrested for petty fraud, drifting between jobs, and drinking heavily. When she met Bruce, he was her escape, a kind but quiet man who shared her love of late nights and bars. For a time, they seemed happy. But when Bruce finally sought help for his alcoholism, everything changed. He got sober, worked steadily, and preferred quiet evenings at home. Stella, however, missed the chaos, the bars, the noise, the attention. To her, sobriety made Bruce boring. Their marriage began to crumble. Then came the money problems. They were behind on their mortgage and drowning in debt. Bruce's life insurance policy, worth $75,000, was their only safety net. Except Stella wanted more, much more. Investigators discovered that she had recently taken out multiple new insurance policies on her husband, some forged, others altered, and all contained a clause. If Bruce's death was ruled accidental, the payout would double. But when doctors listed his cause of death as natural, Stella's plan hit a wall, so she devised a way to change it. If another person died from the same poison, authorities would have no choice but to reconsider Bruce's case. She would stage a copycat poisoning, echoing the infamous Tylenol murders from Chicago, to make it look like a random act of terror instead of a domestic crime. It was a plan both cruel and calculated. She tampered with several Excedrin bottles, placing them on store shelves in different locations around Auburn. Her hope was simple. Once another death occurred, investigators would reopen her husband's case, call it accidental, and she'd collect her windfall. Her victim turned out to be Susan Snow, a complete stranger. When forensic teams examined the cyanide inside both poison bottles, they found traces of green crystalline particles, a chemical blend used in aquarium products, specifically in a rare brand of algaecide called Algae Destroyer. Only one local store regularly sold it, and they sold it almost exclusively to one customer, Stella Nickell. The trail was closing in. Detectives obtained library records showing she had checked out multiple books on poisons, including one with her fingerprints on a page describing cyanide. And then came the final blow. Her own daughter, Cynthia, confessed that her mother had once told her she planned to kill Bruce. Cynthia recalled hearing Stella say she was tired of her husband and that a little poison might fix everything. The puzzle was complete. On December 9th, 1987, police arrested Stella Nickell. The woman who had portrayed herself as a grieving widow was, in truth, the architect of 2 senseless deaths. She was charged with product tampering that resulted in fatalities, a charge that carried a sentence almost as severe as first-degree murder. The trial of Stella Nickell became a media spectacle. Every newspaper headline carried her face. The woman who poisoned strangers for money. Prosecutors laid out a story as cold as it was unbelievable. Stella had turned an over-the-counter painkiller into a murder weapon. In court, her guilt unfolded piece by piece. Experts testified about the cyanide and the green chemical traces identical to the algaecide she bought. Insurance agents confirmed the forged signatures on her husband's policies. Her own daughter's testimony sealed her fate. Cynthia told the jury that her mother had confessed her plan months earlier and had even practiced mixing poison with other substances. The courtroom fell silent when the recordings of Stella's earlier interviews were played, her tone flat, emotionless, detached. She denied everything to the end, claiming she'd been framed. But the evidence was overwhelming. In May 1988, Stella Nickell was convicted on 5 counts of product tampering, resulting in death. The judge sentenced her to 90 years in prison, effectively a life sentence. She was 44 years old. From her cell, she filed appeal after appeal, insisting she was innocent, but none succeeded. In 2017, she became eligible for parole. The request was denied. Today, in her 80s, she remains behind bars, the last living echo of America's most haunting product tampering crime. The Excedrin murders changed the country forever. For the first time, people realized how vulnerable they were to unseen dangers. A simple act, taking medicine for a headache, could suddenly mean death. After the case, federal safety laws tightened, and tamper-proof packaging became mandatory for all consumer medicines. The foil seals and plastic wraps that we casually peel off today were born from fear, from the lives lost because of Stella's greed. The story of Stella Nickell is not just about crime, it's about trust and how fragile it is. One person's greed shattered the quiet confidence millions had in something as ordinary as a pill bottle, and in doing so, she changed an entire nation's behavior. Even now, decades later, her actions remind us that evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, inside something as small as a capsule, waiting for someone to swallow it. So the next time you open a new bottle, remember Susan Snow and Bruce Nickell, 2 innocent lives lost not to illness or accident, but to a plan that should never have existed. Because in the end, what kills isn't always the poison. Sometimes it's the faith we place in the wrong hands. If this story moved you, share it. Not for shock, but as a reminder of how fragile trust can be.